Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 48 of IGEL Weekly. This is one of our community edition podcasts with Seb. One thing I learned going back and listening to the last one that Patrick hosted was that, Seb, I never said your last name. I always kind of pronounce it English-wise, Perusat. Say it in French, the way a Frenchman would say it, and I'll try to practice it.
Honestly, it's extremely gentle for you, but you're definitely not obliged to. It's Perusat.
Perusat.
Think about Peru, like Peruvian, and Sat, like satellite. That's,
Perusat.
I would say, that's great.
Well, that's how I do it. Perusat. That's how I've done it.
Nice.
And then Patrick kind of rolled out very French sounding. And I was like, man, but the most time I just call you Seb because everybody in the IGEL world knows you.
That's Seb,
perfect. So Patrick Toner is with us on the XenTegra side. Patrick is one of our solutions architect, former IGEL employee, and knows IGEL inside and out. Kind of our IGEL secret weapon. Whole company is XenTegra, is big IGEL fans. We know a lot about it, but Patrick's our top secret weapon when it comes to IGEL related discussions. Chris isn't with us. I think maybe first one he's ever missed, but Chris isn't with us. He had something else to do today. Totally understandable. Heck, I've missed plenty of these things, but the show must go on is the idea. So you have that little pastry behind you. Is that a pastry on the desk behind you?
A what?
Is there a pastry on the desk behind you?
A pastry?
Pastry. Over there. Over there, yeah? Is that something else?
No, it's a candle. It's a candlelight holder.
Oh,
it's from my wife. I mean, what comes from me is a racing car over there, and that's from her, obviously.
Yeah. I'm just giving you a hard time. I'm hungry is what I'm trying to say.
Does look like it's
All right. So let's see. So the topic this week, and you guys will maybe find this funny. I had to cut Patrick off because Seb posted the topic and Patrick got all excited and got ready to start talking about no, wait till we hit the record button because that's why we're here. Take great topics that the group comes up with. In this case, the community side, Seb quite often has the idea because he's been working on it and thinking about it. And so we jumped into it. We'll jump into it now, but we want to do this in front of you guys because it's going to come off genuine and honest and real. But the blog, which in most of the cases it's a vlog, which is how to use IGEL OS disk encryption. And it's a video set put together. We're going to talk through it and go over the highlights of it. And then if you want to watch it, just Google what I just said, and you will find it in the IGEL community, or just go look in the IGEL community blogs. But Seb, this is a really good topic for me because I often wonder, and I'm often pleasantly surprised, maybe 100% pleasantly surprised, when I start thinking about mainstream enterprise endpoint operating systems and what they have in them that IGEL, and by that I mean Windows, almost 100% Windows, and what IGEL has done to make sure those features, in this case a security feature, shows up in the IGEL product in the form of IGEL making Linux do the same things, which Linux has it in there without a doubt, and IGEL brings it to the surface, makes it easy to manage. And disk encryption for the operating system drive is one of those things I've often wondered but never asked about. So it's really good that you're bringing this one forward.
Happy to do so. And by the way, it's really hot off the press. Doug just released the video, I would say 20 minutes ago, so we're just right in time. So it's a tutorial recorded last Thursday or last Wednesday because of some interest in the Azure community and asking how to deal with that specific topic. So it's really quite new and brand new, not to say.
So before we jump into the meat of it, let's go to Patrick first. Patrick, why is this important?
Well, I think it's important for a few reasons. We talked about admin passwords. I think it was last podcast or the one before. You want to have a layer of security around, users being able to access things. So this obviously takes it a step further, where you're able to set a password or some sort of encryption on the device itself. You don't have to worry about, it says here on the screen, actually, as I'm speaking, something like a UD Pocket going missing. Well, it's fully encrypted. It's got a password set. Somebody can't just walk away with it and then use it. So, it was funny. I was about to say to Seb before this started, this was a feature that was on the IGEL roadmap for quite a while. And then when I moved over from IGEL to XenTegra, I think it was right around that time that this released. So this is going to be kind of new to me, this feature. I haven't had an opportunity to configure this with a customer. So I did get a little excited. I'm excited to kind of see how this works and learn from Seb here.
So I guess my comment of, does IGEL have this, that your Windows mainstream operating system? I guess that's timely because it didn't. But as with many things, you guys recognize needs that need to happen and you put it in the product.
That's right. Sometimes in a quite good old German way. So between the time where we see a need and the time we implement it, we are thinking about the topic 10,000 times, but finally it arrived in our product. And I must say, I was asked a couple of times in enterprise projects, especially, can you use TPM? Which kind of encryption are you using locally? Can we encrypt the operating system partition in general? What happened to the user data if the UD Pocket gets stolen? And all of that stuff brought together finally brought that feature coming up. I mean, I would say the first version of that feature, and I'm pretty sure we might expect some bigger change in the next years regarding that topic, because obviously we are moving away from this hardware vendor with a little bit of software aspect to a full-blown software product vendor. And that's where I would say we still have a little bit of homework to do. What happens if the device gets ripped off and or maybe got stolen? How can we wipe that device remotely? All that small stuff, we are already aware how to do that. We can do that in our specific ways, but there's still some homework to do. So that's definitely a huge step in the right direction, I think.
For sure. Okay. So I'll just hit these real quick. I think you said on the obfuscate corporate identity. I don't think I ever knew how to spell that word until just now. Active Directory, hiding those logins. Lost devices like a UD Pocket or a physical device, but those UD Pockets, right? I like the concept. I don't like the idea somebody could just take it and do maybe something with it. I mean, keep in mind, IGEL is a read-only operating system for the most part. There's not a lot of data on it, but for some organizations, this is a security requirement that is a checkbox. And if you don't have it, you can't play along. Extraction of local data. I was just talking about interaction with the local OS, enhanced chain of trust. And the last one, maybe most importantly, from a security team perspective and maybe from a cyber insurance perspective, compliance. And that last one's becoming more and more common, right? If you can't check all those cybersecurity boxes, then you can't get insurance. And without insurance, you can't stay in business.
So true.
So, Seb, you may not know the answer to this question. How often is an enhancement like this something that you guys bring up and the team in Germany puts into the product at some point? And how often is it that a big customer says, like you, but I can't use you unless you do this? And the latter is the one that drives the feature coming to market.
So the most honest answer I could give is it depends from the size of the project and the size of the customer. If a huge amount of licenses would be sold, I don't know, 1,000 less licenses in one step, we will consider more or less every feature request, not saying we will implement it or implement them in general, but we will definitely try to do whatever we can. On the other hand, if we stay realistic and we know that the amount of work we have to put into the development platform is limited, but the impact on the market is high, we can do that even without a feature request. And that's where the power of community is coming up. We have a tool there which is called Nolt, where you can propose features, which is not a feature request process, but people can say, hey, this feature would be cool, and people can upvote or downvote that. And that's also an approach where we are getting feedback from the market and saying, okay, this feature is extremely needed. And coming back to your question, the device encryption, like an example, came from multiple enterprise projects where the local encryption was mandatory. There was no way around. And I must say that that's a discussion that we have, and I guess Patrick had 10 times, is what about antivirus locally? What about encryption locally? And that's a discussion which is quite difficult to bring up because we're still an edge operating system, but we have also the ability to store local data. So where is the difference between a standard workstation and a think line operating system? And that's a move where we are, let's say, going through the last 5 to 8 years. And that's one of the aspects where I'm saying we are becoming an operating system vendor and a management platform, obviously.
Right. And that's good that IGEL is customer friendly and understands that. And to be quite frank, when you compare Microsoft's development of their operating system to IGEL, you can be much more agile and nimble. I would say the same thing about like a Dell Wise and an HP and others too. I mean, you guys are big with the features you need, but still a small enough company that understands customer and vendor and VAR partnerships.
Yeah.
All right, so let's kind of walk through this. Seb, you start off talking about the need, and I'm going to fast forward this so I can stop it when I need to. What's next in the conversation in the video?
So the next step that we're covering is speaking about the general approach, how to deal with the feature itself, what is needed. So that's where we are going through the process of speaking of the configuration method that we have. So we have the encryption method, which is like everything that we're doing on the IGEL OS operating platform. We are starting in the IGEL UMS, so the Universal Management Suite, which is the management platform for all the configuration that you want to deploy to the endpoint. And there, you could say it's basically just one or two checkboxes that you need. So you create a profile, and then you have, obviously, that's something that I don't mention every time that we have a podcast, but I will just mention it here again. If you don't see that feature in a profile, it might be that the profile you're looking at is an older firmware, or maybe your UMS is not able to handle that. So we're always speaking about the latest public versions. So from there, we have on the security already the ability to deliver administrator passwords, to use smart authentication. But now, since this feature was introduced, there was a specific menu which is called device encryption. And that's where I'm leading you, the audience, to how to configure it. That's quite easy, I would say. So there is not a big amount of configuration step that you need to consider if you do that, but I will still give you some hints. So first of all, the standard value that is predefined is called keep. That doesn't tell you that much, but would say that it will just keep the local configuration of the endpoint when it comes to encryption. So in a standard case, disabled. Or if the user enabled it locally or a site admin, it will keep it activate. But that's obviously not what you want. You want to deploy that setting to all your devices and force your user to use the encryption.
He said in this conversation, you're going to talk about, okay, so keep means it's already there and you want to make sure it stays there. Activate means it wasn't encrypted. Now you're going to encrypt it. At some point in this, will you talk through, what to be expected on the endpoint in terms of how much overhead and time that this might take? Is it happen in front of the user? Does it happen in the background? I just want to weave that in as you're talking through this.
Sure. That's something that you might see on the video a little bit later on. But yes, so as soon as you deploy that setting to an endpoint, the endpoint will show up a little pop-up window where the user is asked to enter one time and then confirm a specific password. This password has to match, obviously, some criteria that you are delivering in your profile, saying that specific special characters are allowed or not allowed, or saying that you must have a specific length or specific number of characters or numbers, is something that you will set up in the profile. And as soon as you created a profile, assign the profile to your endpoints, there will be a pop-up. So that's something to consider, by the way. If you push the setting right now to all the devices, without saying on next reboot, there will be a small pop-up which is called device encryption. And from there, the user can say whatever he likes or whatever she likes. And like on most password configuration dialogues, you will also have a path of strength bar, which is changing from red to yellow to green, saying that your password is strong enough or not to match the criteria. And as soon as you click apply on that window, the encryption step will start. We do recommend, obviously, to not reboot the device during that time, do not power off the device during that time, because then your device might really got wrecked up. But if you stay there, on most hardware I've seen, it takes from 2 minutes to 15 or 20 minutes, but not more than that. And since we are considering an IGEL operating system, we're not speaking about an operating system which is 30 gigabyte big or 40. And I hope it will stay there, stays like that. But you have between, 1.5 to 4 gigabyte approximately of disk space you are using, and the standard partition sizes that we're using is something between 2 and 4 gigabytes. So it's pretty fast for the encryption itself. And Obviously, we didn't mention it, but we are not speaking about a full disk encryption, but only about an operating system partition encryption. So we're not encrypting 500 gigabytes of data or of sectors, but really what we are needing for the operating system. That's where we are on this configuration window. Obviously, like on every IGEL step, everything is described, so you will never have something which is disappearing or going to the background. You always have the ability to see where it happens, and if it takes too long, you are allowed to start a session and work in parallel. I just would have an eye on, if you're using a laptop, that you have enough power supply to do that during the step.
Hey, okay, good, really good point about the laptop. So if it died in the middle of it, that'd be a really bad day, I assume, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's IGEL OS, right? So you can reflash it quite easily, but still it's something that you have to keep in mind, right?
And as far as the password setting, and Patrick, I want you to chime in here. You probably have a lot of comments or questions. Is it up to the person sitting in front of the screen to set that password, or can you set that password systematically from the UMS?
For the moment, it's only user-based. So the user has to set the password. And that's what I mentioned at the beginning. It's a first step of that product, right? So we might expect some changes like setting up a general password, or maybe having a password which can be reset by the user then if you want to change the encryption. But for the moment, it's really user-based.
Yeah, that was the one question I was already hearing in my head from customers. What if my employee forgets the password?
Yeah.
So it's a total reflash at that point.
That's what we do recommend right now. Yes.
Okay.
So the thing that I would mention.
That wouldn't be, so guys, I have a question. So if you have to reset the thing, and Seb, you alluded to it a minute ago, if you had to re-image it because it's encrypted, that's okay. We're just going to overwrite the encryption at that point, or is it just unusable?
No, you can definitely flash it. And that's the way how I had 2 times the situation in the last months where it happened, where the customer could recover the device. Obviously, you don't have to migrate the old settings. In that case, it's a specific switch that you have to switch on or off if you want to keep on or discard them in the OS creator process of reimagining the device. But that's something which works pretty fine.
Yeah, so I'm guessing too here, Seb, this is a one-to-one device type of configuration, right? You know, so customers who have shared devices, this is not in play, unless they would, you know, sharing a password amongst the team probably not going to be really practical.
Or write it on a post-it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, post-it note. No. That's where security really comes in. Post-it notes.
Yeah.
So guys, I have a question. This is version 1. I understand that, you know, in the world of, say, Windows, this disk encryption stuff kind of happens under the scenes, and the users, plural in this case, wouldn't know it. Is that where this is headed? Or is this the intent of the product the way it is today?
If you ask just myself, I would say it's not the final version, since we're missing specific steps like the remote recovery, like what happened to the device is somewhere under the desk and never restarted, and the device went over to another employee. I couldn't remember the password. That's the steps where I'm saying, as soon as we are speaking about the upcoming versions of the UMS and OS, which we might expect someone this year, we might definitely expect there a huge change in that behavior. That's what I have been told. So for the first step, for the OS 11 version and UMS 6 or 10, that's where we are. But from all the Windows or Mac OS based administrators who might already have used that for their Firebolt or BitLocker, please expect that it will get smarter than it is at the moment. Definitely, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in some cases, because IGEL is so secure to me, and this is just a matter of checking boxes, but I also get it. Hey, so maybe I missed it, but let's say you're using Workplace. Okay, so it's going to come up. You're going to have to enter that password now, and then you would enter your username and password. Let's say you're AD, you log in as an AD user. That would be a second currently login at that point, or your Citrix login would be a second login. Something would be a second login. Okay.
Yes, that's the short answer. And I would add, so the main goal is, because that's what I have been asked on my projects from customers. Hey, we're deploying corporate identity files like a wallpaper, like a specific session name. So the Citrix icon name on the depth is already holding company data because, yeah, they are used to. Or they're having specific customer logos already in the start menu and whatever you think of regarding corporate identity.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that we're trying to deal with. You boot up a device that you find somewhere on the street. I mean, speaking of a UD Pocket, you don't find laptop that often on the street, but if you boot up a UD Pocket on another PC, you will already see the customer name. You will see his wallpaper. So if you want to target this environment, you already have first information that they're using Citrix, the name of maybe the names of the customer because you saved the last username in the Citrix Workspace app client, might be, and then you can go wider. That's what we are trying to avoid with the pre-boot authentication. That is my best name for the device encryption, because the pre-boot authentication covers it a little bit better than the encryption, in my opinion. Because when you boot up the device, what we are activating today in the tutorial and on the podcast is a pre-boot authentication, which will then decrypt your disk. So, or decrypt your partition, to be more precise. So you have, before you even see something, you will get a device encryption is active window where you have to enter your password. You don't have to use a user, just a password that you define. And then from there, as soon as you hit enter or the little arrow, it will decrypt and start the rest of the operating system to the desktop or to the Active Directory login screen.
And Seb, that's what every time the device boots up? So every time you do a reboot or start the device up for the first time, the user will get a prompt.
Reboot 2. It will cover the reboot and the cold boot, both of them.
Got it.
So, yeah, we can call it maybe too secure sometimes, but that's, yeah, that's the case at the moment.
And are you guys seeing, and I'm just not sure about this, are you guys seeing requirements in, GDPR over in Europe with this? Or is it more customer driven? What have you seen with that? At
the moment, mostly customer driven. Okay. Especially if the customers was involved were mostly military and banks and insurances, to be even more precise. That was the three kind of verticals where this requirement was not an option but was mandatory. And their first goal was encryption. And then we told them all the IGEL story and said, okay, it makes sense to us, but still we have to rely on an encryption and on something which will obfuscate, so hide any kind of company data if the device got found. And that's where this small window, which is not really good looking, but it doesn't have to. A BitLocker pin entry window isn't looking good either, or firewall. So you don't even have an IGEL logo there. You just have a little lock, the password field, and then, which is pretty cool, I must say, a failed login attempts window showing up. So that's something which I didn't mention until now, but it's already mentioned in the video too. If you enter the password 1, 2, or 3 times again wrongly, it will increase a counter. So you maybe already have that on your Android or iOS smartphone or a pad, where if you enter your password too often, it will delay the next try, it will delay even more the next try, etc., etc. So that's something that we already covered there too. And just because I made that mistake on a BitLocker in the early days, BitLocker is, at least it was at that time where I tested it, on American layout. So I had not a PIN, but a real password for the BitLocker. And the password was containing some specific characters. And it was just locked out because I didn't thought about the American layout. That's not the case here. The IGEL operating system is such intelligent, I must say, that you have already on the screen a drop-down menu where you can choose every keyboard layout that's in our operating system, no matter if it was configured in a profile or not. That's not the case. It just covers everything, because you might connect your UD Pocket to a device where, I don't know, Chinese that keyboard is connected. Okay, Chinese might not be the best idea, but let's say Danish or Swedish or Canadian layout. And you might fail because you don't have your typical characters. That's something that we covered. And then you might ask, what about touchscreens? It's all there too. So you already have the ability to open a touchscreen keyboard there. So that's pretty cool, I must say.
So, we talked earlier, Seb, about it's not a fit everywhere, like one-to-one, it's got to be a one-to-one device. So what would your recommendation be for, an organization where they say, okay, we want our work from home users that use this feature, but all of our on-site thin clients, they're going to be just, no local encryption. They're shared. Maybe they're doing hoteling. They're shared devices. What's your suggestion there?
That's a tough topic, obviously. Which kind of specific use case were you thinking about in that case?
Well, I'm thinking like so this is set by profile, right? So you could in theory separate this out, by directory, right? So if you have work from home users, let's say 100 work from home users, you could just only implement this for those 100, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Very good.
That's if someone might be interested in that approach. We have a couple of features inside of the IGEL management platform, which are called default directory rules. It's just one example, but we have a couple of other approaches. That might be the most common one. And saying as soon as a teleworker is starting his device, we're not speaking about the device encryption, we're starting the device, it will usually connect via the ICG, so the IGEL Cloud Gateway, which creates a connection between outside devices and your internal UMS measurement system. So from there, you can say if the device is started via an ICG, don't put that specific policy on, or if you want to, you can activate it there. Or saying if the device is holding a public IP address, then do that or don't do that. So yes.
Got it.
Hey Seb, how likely and capable is it? How likely is it somebody would want to unencrypt it? How capable is it of unencrypting it?
I would not say that it's impossible, because nothing is impossible in the IT world. I would say it's highly improbable for standard persons like you and I. If you're using extremely powerful NVIDIA decryption systems, which are used by intelligence, etc., by army intelligence, and all stuff, obviously can take a few days and then you're out. But we still have to think about the aspect, what would be the use case? The person would have then an operating system which is still secure, where still passwords are hashed, are encrypted, where the configuration and data is not stored locally, but still on your Citrix farm. So even there, if someone would really want to do that, he might, definitely. But I would say that the amount of time and effort that he needs to deliver to do that is not in the relation to what he would get. But it would definitely be a try, yes. So it is not impossible, but highly improbable.
And the reality of it is you're probably going to want to just factory reset, or not reset, but actually re-image the device anyway to overcome that.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, quick one-off. You guys should make this wallpaper you have here part of the IGEL OS built-in wallpapers.
Yeah,
it's pretty sweet.
I'll describe it for people who may be listening at some point. It's some Vikings. It looks like cartoonish Vikings throwing Windows and Apple and other operating systems off the side of a cliff because they just don't need them anymore.
Yeah, that was one of the first wallpapers I used, I don't know, 7 years ago, something like that, when I had to deliver internet trainings. And since then, if I don't have to do something with a specific partner where I have to put them, their logo, etc., in my environment, I'm using just something more fun, because we're mostly speaking to people, to IT folks, to administrators, who are liking such kind of jokes, and mostly are not obviously some really Windows or Mac related. So it's always fun to see that.
Yeah, if you would share that with us, that'd be awesome. I'd love to have that one. So,
oh yeah, sure.
In this case, you're in a section of the video called debugging. Why are you here? Why are you doing this?
Just for one simple reason. Every encryption step holds also some risks. Nothing will happen on an encryption without having a small piece of of danger. So the first thing that I would like to mention to every listener is there are already other use cases where it's extremely important to have time and date set properly via a net time protocol server called NTP. There are plenty of them, from certificate verifications, communication, ICG, so the Azure Cloud Gateway configuration and usage. But never forget that you also have a BIOS or UEFI where you have also a time and date set locally. And I wouldn't say it happened 10,000 times. That would be a lie. But I had one time situation in the community where after setting the password correctly, the device couldn't be decrypted because the time and date on the BIOS was just racked up. So it was, I don't know, something like 2004 and February when it was in July. So nothing was good. We suspect that the CMOS battery was down and wasn't able to hold the actual data and configurations, just a suspicion. So that's something that I'm trying to teach in the video, which kind of debugging steps I would try to follow if someone is asking, what can I do if it fails? I mean, you will not, in most cases, you might not recover the device. We have a few of them where it might work, but in most cases, you would just know where it hanged and where the issue is coming from.
Okay. So anything specific to call out in the motions of walking through it now? Looks like you're going to factory default. You're just nuking it, basically, right?
Right. So we have already the ability to check in the pre-boot authentication method which steps are done before it fails. So we already covered in another tutorial with you guys, the verbose boot, which is giving where the Azure operating system is just showing a black screen or it's showing a logo. There's stuff happening behind the scenes, obviously, because it's not just showing a black display. We are showing something in the background. And to get that specific kind of information, you have to boot via the IGEL operating system boot menu, which is with the key escape on your keyboard, the ability to start into the verbose boot. And you would see if something before the password screen is showing up tells you something. I mean, there is no real recommendation that I have. Just check that. Maybe you will find something that leads to an error. And from there, you can also enter the password from the command line perspective. So it helps you a little bit to better understand where the device hangs, or even if after the encryption password entry, the device will not boot. That might also be the case. That's where the verbose boot will definitely help you to find the root cause of the issue.
Yeah.
You know, you got me thinking too here, Seb. So you're saying on a kind of a similar, on a related but different note, if somebody wanted to reset this to factory default, what happens first? Do they get prompted with the boot encryption first, or are they able to reset to factory default? And then if they get to there, does it prompt them for that password?
Unfortunately, you cannot reset it to factory default from there. So you will still be asked for the pre-boot authentication password. That was one of the first thing I tried, to be honest, because I just wanted to know how does it work. But in that case, even the recovery path that you can use for the administrator password instead of the Azure operating system will not work. So that's where we have to rely on the reflashing.
So that's booting to an OSC creator stick.
Yep.
And totally reflashing. Okay.
Yeah.
So Seb, what's left in the video? See if I go here.
We are almost done, besides one thing, because we spoke all the time about activating the feature, but what about deactivating it? You might have a situation where you tested it and you want to disable the setting. So just removing the profile would not be enough, for the reason that we mentioned at the beginning of the tutorial. The standard setting is usually keep. So even if you created a profile somewhere where you activate the standard setting, it will just keep the local encryption. So my recommendation is locally or inside a profile saying where you activated the feature, where you said instead of keep, activate, deactivate, save, assign the profile to the endpoint, and in the same manner like the pop-up showed up for the encryption password entry, the user will get a notification saying, hey, you want to decrypt your operating system? no big deal. Just enter your password to be sure that you are allowed to, bam, and then the decryption process is starting. And then the same recommendations are applying. Be careful to not power off your device or just plugging it off, and then you're good.
And can between the two of you smart guys tell me a situation where you think that would ever happen, where they actually try to decrypt it?
Patrick, you first.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you never know, right? There's customers out there, they maybe the users start complaining, they don't like doing this every time, and they say, you know what, we're gonna just remove this setting. And so to do that, it sounds like, Seb, they would have to push the profile to deactivate, and each user would have to enter the password one final time. Correct?
Yeah.
Got it. I can see that. I can see that playing out for sure.
Maybe they got through their security audit. Now they want to unencrypt it because
right. They checked the box. Now they can.
We laugh, but I am certain that's happened sometime.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah. All right.
I would say I would just add maybe some performance issues that you are facing, maybe, and you want to be sure that it's not related to a local encryption process, which is not the case, but not taking too much performance. I don't know. That might be also one approach. So, yeah, performance issue.
You, I think you talked about the performance required to encrypt it. Is there a performance degradation that we should expect using an encrypted system?
That's a really good question. I must say that I didn't notice anything, but I'm mostly working in virtual environments. Even my UD7, but it's still a quite powerful device. I didn't see something like that. If you ask me, just myself, just my stomach feeling, if you're using the old UD2 or the actual UD2, I would maybe avoid to use that there, just because the devices are already quite thin in terms of performance. And if you're using any kind of unified communication optimization, the device is already at 100% CPU and RAM usage. Not exactly, but in most cases. So that's something that I wouldn't do. But since the device encryption mostly hits OSC or UD Pocket devices, I must say that nearly every device, which is a standard laptop, shouldn't see any kind of degradation. But that's definitely a good question that I cannot answer to 100% at the moment.
I mean, in theory, there has to be some, but whether it's noticeable by the human being,
yeah,
that's the question. Especially in a scenario where you're maybe connecting to a Citrix, a VMware, a Microsoft, and you have this middle layer, which is really absorbing most of the heavy lifting, you probably shouldn't even notice.
Yeah, I agree.
Patrick, any take on that one?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I was thinking in theory, you should have more of a, degradation of performance if it's a fat client, right? I mean, if all of your data is local, your workloads are local, I'd imagine you're going to see it more there. But because IGEL is connecting to Citrix, it's connecting to VMware, AVD, whatever, the workload's being done somewhere else. It's really just kind of streaming that experience to you.
Yeah. I mean, it's an asynchronous solution. There is impact on the endpoint side, whether it's noticeable. Don't know. Probably not. Especially if you're using a decent machine to begin with. If you're using that 18-year-old device that every once in a while someone will try to convert, aka me, and prove it still works, you might notice it then. And going back to some of the original comments, it's read only to begin with. It has very little data local to begin with. Don't just turn it on because you can. Consider not turning it on unless you need to turn it on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, guys, that's kind of a wrap. I appreciate you joining and helping with this topic. Always good, Seb, and extremely thankful that you show up every time with something timely and important to cover. It's makes my life easy and makes the podcast relevant.
My pleasure, guys.
With that, we'll wrap it up. Have a good week.
You too, guys.
Take care, guys.
See you soon.